Hello everyone, just a quick announcement. I will be doing 3 panels at Anime Revolution, August 4th through August 6th, 2017, in Vancouver, BC. The panels will be Blatant Copyright Infringement in Anime, Quebec Anime Bizarro Wonderland, and Amazing Anime Deaths. The days and times of those panels have not been finalized yet, so just keep your eye on the schedule if you're going to the con. I think there's a strong possibility that a couple of them might be fairly early in the morning, so make sure you keep your schedule flexible if you are coming. I hope to see you there, and let's get on with the show. Hey everyone, welcome to Zonan Canada. I'm your host, Jesse Betteridge. So today on the show, I'll be talking to Jose Argumedo. Jose has been a long-time part of the Toonami and anime on TV fandom in the United States, and he is technically still involved with the One Piece podcast and has been for a long time. He hasn't appeared on it in quite a while, and the reason is because he actually works for CNN now, making him one of the very few fanboys of anime on TV who has successfully made that jump into working in television. And congratulations on that to you, Jose, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Also, currently working on some stuff for Discotek. Wait, should I plug stuff? I'm sorry.
Oh, go for it. Yeah, I have no problem with plugging Discotek on this show.
Okay, good. Oh, that's good to hear. I'm currently working on Lupin.
Yeah.
Still working on Lupin Part 2 and Part 4, and Part 4, as of this recording, airs tonight. It comes back after being off for a week for the Attack on Titan marathon, so really excited for you guys to check out Episode 3. It's a good one. I have not seen the entire dub yet. I have it. I have it on me, but I haven't watched it yet.
Well, we don't get it in Canada, but I guess it'll be on the Funimation now because they are.
It will be on Funimation now. They seem to have the streaming rights.
Yeah, they will be. They are doing a. I guess they are calling them simuldubs now. They are doing Lupin the Third Part 4 as a simuldub. So even though we don't get that broadcast in Canada, we can watch it on Funimation's website, and I assume that it's going to line up with the Toonami broadcast after a couple weeks once that gets going. And you also you worked on the IGPX release as well for Discotek.
Yes.
I know you were on that for quite a while.
I was one of the producers on that, and yeah, that was a labor of love, and no other company other than Discotek would be crazy enough to let me do something like that. And I'm kind of glad I did it when I did it, because trying to do that project today would have been impossible. So it's very worked out with the timing. But yeah, we went back and we remastered it and put it out on DVD, and had a really fun time working on it. But it was I learned a lot because I didn't know crap about home video. I thought I was hot shit and I didn't know crap.
Yeah. If any listeners aren't aware, many of these Discotek projects are indeed side projects and labors of love for the people who work on them. So it's awesome that you were able to put so much work into that particular release. And I think a lot of people, at least in my audience, haven't seen IGPX because it never aired or streamed up here. But that's a pretty solid release that Jose worked on for Discotek on that one.
Yep. So the thing that is cool about Discotek is that basically we all work on. We're all contractors. There are no employees at Discotek other than the people who own it. All the people who work on that stuff, to my knowledge, we're all contractors. We all kind of just do it we do it for money, but we also do it mostly because we love it. Believe me, if I was living off of what Discotek paid me, I'd be dead by now. So, and I think that I'm not going to say that goes for everybody, but for me, it's more of just I really want to work on this, and I'm going to try to find the time to. It's been harder and harder lately, so I've been working on less and less projects.
But I mean, with your current job, you're not going to. It's pretty difficult, but it's amazing that you're still able to find as much time as you do.
Yeah, I'm hoping to wrap up some of that stuff soon because they've been waiting on me for some of it. So hopefully that'll be done very soon. Lupin, I think on Part 2 all of my stuff is done, so they're not waiting on me. Part 4 I still have to finish my interview with Richard and Ellen, which I think came out really nice. I just have to finish editing it. And, that'll be out soon.
Yeah. Lupin the Third Part 4 is fantastic. Check it out and don't hesitate to grab that release when it comes out. I'm sure it'll be well worth your time.
The Toonami broadcast bought us a little time, by the way. We're really happy about that. Because I think we were gonna release it like way sooner. Don't quote me on this. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but we were involved in getting it on Toonami. I sent an email. I made introductions, and that was kind of the end of my involvement. But that led to the show getting on Toonami, and because of that, it bought us a little time on the Blu-ray, which is great because we could really use that time.
And I understand that like the Adult Swim broadcast license and the Discotek home video license are kind of separate affairs entirely. Adult Swim did not license this series from Discotek. Both companies work directly with TMS, which is why the version, like the dub version that airs on TV, has different music and a few different things than what we're going to see on the home video release, at least as far as the...
I'm not going to comment too much on the dub because it's still up in the air. But yes, we do not have the broadcast rights to Lupin the Third, but Discotek was involved because I was the one who sent all the emails out. We were involved in getting TMS to talk to Adult Swim. We made those introductions and made that happen. We're happy to be a part of the process. There are some decisions that they made that I gotta tread carefully here. There are some decisions they made for their reasons that might not be what you see on the home video release. Again, it's still up on the air, so I other than that I can't really comment too much. But I hope that we answer. We try to be as transparent as possible at Discotek. I hope that we can answer all that we can, but it's really just we're still up in the air. We're still working on it.
Maybe next you can try and get TMS in contact with some Canadian broadcasters and get Lupin the Third Part 4 up here, airing up here somewhere.
I don't know if Discotek has any Canadian releases, so I hesitate to speak for them on that front.
They're the same in Canada and the US.
So we have the
video
same
rights
distributor.
are attached. They don't really have proper distribution here. Like, they don't have an actual company that does proper distribution here. You can order them through like Amazon, but you have to pay an extra importation fee, so they're really marked up. Discotek did have like a deal with HMV when they were still running, and they carried their releases in stores at a reasonable price, but HMV shut down earlier this year.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, and it was like HMV was really getting good when it came to stocking anime home video releases. They were actually more reliable than Amazon.ca in a lot of cases, and had better pricing and better selection.
Doesn't Right Stuff ship to you guys in Canada?
They do. That's kind of a whole other issue. They do have they have eliminated a lot of the problems with paying having to pay customs fees, which happened a lot back about a decade or so ago. They cover that on their end now, so you can actually ship to Canada without having to worry about that. But the shipping costs are kind of annoying. It's basically you have to buy $250 US worth of product in order to get free shipping, and the shipping can be a little out of hand when you're below that. I think it's like minimum $15 or something. So no matter what, you have to put in a fairly big order to make it worthwhile. And also their website don't
stuff because they're a small company like us at Discotek, so like I understand why you need to up your prices sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I wish they could at least have like tiered shipping rates or discounts on shipping if you buy a certain quantity of product, or at least have Canadian dollar conversion on their website as well, because $250 US adds up quite a bit when you're buying from Canada. But yeah, home video rights attached. So it would be kind of the same situation, but I doubt that there'd be a lot of success getting anyone to pick up any broadcasters to pick up anime right now in Canada.
That's a shame.
Yeah, but today's episode is mainly going to be focusing on streaming, which means that this is another episode that is probably going to be really relevant and timely. If you're listening to it close to when it came out, it's probably not going to age well, because I think most of the stuff we talk about is probably going to be dramatically different within like 6 to 8 months. That's consistently been the case in every episode that we've done, talking about streaming issues. So maybe some of the stuff we speculate on will will come to pass. Maybe it won't. It's hard to say. If you're listening to this episode in like late 2019 or anything, you might not get much out of it. Like, you might want to just go listen to the PJ Phil episode again or something. But who's to say? Maybe our speculation and predictions will be entertaining in the future.
I hope we're totally right and we're never wrong.
Yeah,
I'm sure that won't happen.
I don't think we've ever correctly predicted anything on this show, but
that's okay.
So at the time we recorded this, we're about 2 weeks ago. Yet another streaming platform for anime launched called HiDive.
Right.
It's not really new. It's basically a rebranded version of Sentai's anime network service, but they're claiming that they have no actual connection to it, just like they claim they have no connection to Made in Japan or any of those other...
Or Anime Network.
Or Anime Network, for that matter, yeah. They're not, like, no actual connection to Section 23. They're just good friends. But, it's a rebranding. It's meant to be more attractive and competitive with the likes of Crunchyroll and Funimation and Netflix and Amazon Prime and Tubi TV and Viewster and Hulu and Anime Lab and even Shudder, which has like stuff like Belladonna of Sadness on it. And then of course you look at all the non-anime...
Turner Classic Movies had it like a couple of weeks ago. I didn't know it was on already.
Yeah, they did. Shudder has that one streaming, which is pretty cool. And then there's all the non-anime services you can subscribe to, like Mubi and Filmstock and HBO Go and CBS All Access and Acorn TV.
I gotta correct you. Filmstruck.
Filmstruck. I thought I said Filmstruck. That's what I had written down.
You said Filmstock.
Oh, okay. I meant to say Filmstruck. I had Filmstruck written down. I didn't say...
Oh, okay. Sorry, that's a Turner property, so I gotta make sure that one's correct.
Okay, no problem. And of course you have Crave TV in Canada. And, if I didn't know any better, Jose, I'd say this is, balancing all these services is a kind of a lot like subscribing to cable in a few ways, wouldn't you say?
If you start adding up all these services, you start getting to the point where you might as well get a cable subscription because you will get as much content. That's the thing that's kind of adding up with all these services. Because look, I currently subscribe to a couple of these services myself. I recently got rid of Uverse, which is not quite cable, but we'll call it cable for these purposes. So I got rid of cable. I now have DirecTV Now. I have Netflix, and I have Funimation currently. I'll probably, once the subscription is up, I'll probably kick it to the curb and get Verve, which is Crunchyroll's little bundling service, which I constantly make fun of Adam Sheehan for. Every time I see him, I'm like, hey, that's cable.
Yeah, we don't have Verve is one thing we don't have in Canada for some reason.
I'm sure it'll come.
Yeah.
Because it's not just Crunchyroll, it's like Funimation, it's Rooster Teeth, it's a whole bunch of services for $9.99 a month, for like 8 channels. And I also subscribe to Amazon Prime, which is $99 a year. So that's a lot of stuff I'm subscribing to, and it works out to about what maybe a basic or a mid-level tier of Uverse or DirecTV would be. So I'm not really saving all that much money. The cool thing about it is I have it all on my Apple TV, which is the really convenient thing. But yeah, there's a lot of services out there, and it's nice that we have all these options, but we still have to pay for that content. And the thing that I think that people really got upset about HiDive for, or people are really upset about Anime Strike is they have exclusive content, which has always been a thing, I mean to say. Which, HBO, for example, has always had exclusive content that's behind a bit of a tier, or in its own standalone service, where you can only watch something like Game of Thrones on HBO. So you can only watch what is it called? Legend of the Galactic Heroes? Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Man, I just need to turn in my anime card. You can only currently watch that on HiDive, to my knowledge. So that's another service you have to sign up for. I remember when, Young Justice, a show that a lot of people were like, yes, it's saved. boo, it's on another streaming service that I have to subscribe to that DC is launching this
Yeah,
year.
a new DC exclusive streaming service, and of course we don't even know like what countries it's going to be available in either.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the other problem, but that's the world we're kind of looking at. We're finally getting that a la carte world, but to make it enticing and competitive, we are just really spreading out content so that you have to subscribe to so many services.
Isn't this what everyone wanted, though? Just total freedom to watch whatever they want, whenever they want.
Yeah, you think that, but it's the thing I've noticed is that people keep complaining every time there's an exclusive thing. What people actually want is something like a Netflix or a Hulu where everything is there. But even Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime or whatever don't have everything. That's just never going to be a reality, I think.
That's always kind of the initial
that's
grab.
The pie in the sky.
Yeah, that's the pie in the sky. That's kind of what you go, like when these services launch, that's what you're expecting it to evolve into. And I've noticed that people in the United States, at least people who I follow, like this dream is only kind of starting to shatter now. People are finally starting to understand the drawbacks to streaming. I think the rest of the world was kind of caught on to these limitations a long time ago, but in the U.S. you've had kind of a balanced ecosystem for a little while that was able to give that illusion. But now when you have stuff like Amazon Prime launching all these sub channels and the anime market becoming more fragmented, and again like companies like Turner launching a whole bunch of different services, such as the DC one, like
that's Warner Brothers.
Oh, Warner. Warner. Sure.
That's our friends at Warner Brothers. Yeah.
Yeah.
We launched Boomerang and Filmstruck, and we will have. I know that we're going to have a couple more. I want to say this year, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. I know that we have more coming because streaming is kind of the Wild West right now. Time Warner, we have a lot of different streaming services. We have good old-fashioned HBO Now. We have Drama Fever, which is something that Warner Brothers acquired. We have the DC service coming. We have Warner Archive Collection. We have Filmstruck. We have Boomerang, which recently launched. Like, we have a whole lot of things, and we're going to have a lot more services to try to cater to specific niche audiences, I guess, which is great because then we could possibly be serving audiences that otherwise would not be served on the platform of television. But at the same time, all this adds up for the consumer. And it's how much do you want that content?
Do you think that this is like sort of the direction that things are going, for better or worse? Do you think it really is better for targeting niche audiences? Do you think the companies who are launching all these services are going to follow through with that mentality? Because targeting niche audiences is something that at least American entertainment companies are notoriously horrible at.
Yeah, obviously the big money is in the broad content. And I think, whether it's Disney or us over at Time Warner or our friends at Comcast or whatever, like, they are always going to put the most resources to the content that is going to be able to reach the most people. But if there's a passionate fan base that is willing to spend money, and we can easily cater to that audience for a low cost, we can play in that field as well. I think Warner Brothers' Drama Fever is the perfect example of that, because I believe it's K-dramas, and it seems to do very well because there's a passionate fan base for that.
I hadn't heard that they acquired Drama Fever. That's interesting.
Yep. I think that was back in 2016, 2015.
Okay.
So it was recent.
What would you say if we're looking at sort of the economics behind streaming and like the streaming environment that we're seem to be moving towards, and the cable environment that we seem to be moving away from, and people really want it to move away from, that has more of a a bundling mentality behind it? Could you pinpoint like any one fundamental difference between the two ways of doing things, or is it way more complicated than that?
I think and I'm going to be quoting Rich Greenfield, because he had a great point on Reliable Sources podcast last week, which is one of our CNN podcasts. And so I'm getting this from him, but he made such a great point about it. There is going to be this want for a bundle. People are really going to want to bundle stuff together, but not necessarily content. So if you look at what Amazon Prime is doing, $99 a year, that comes with Prime shipping. It comes with Prime Video. It comes with Prime Music. It comes with Prime, reading. It comes with Audible channels. You get a free book every month to borrow. You get Prime Photos. You get Prime Early Access. You get Twitch Prime. You get all this stuff for the privilege of paying Amazon $99 a year. And they apparently want to add more service. And, Prime is a loss leader, but they want to add a lot more services to that. I think that's going to be the kind of mentality we're going to start seeing with the bundle. Our friends at Crunchyroll are doing something similar with Verve, where they know that people want to see this content or don't want to pay so many things for like Funimation and Crunchyroll, and they just want them together because they're the two big ones anyways, and Rooster Teeth and College Humor and all those. What if we can just cater to that crowd and just build something that's a little more customized for them? So I think that we're going to see that kind of stuff, but I think the big goal is to add stuff like your Amazon Primes or your cable companies, where they'll throw in the internet, or you have to get the internet, but you get so many channels for this amount, or you get AT&T service, for example. Like, if you get DirecTV, we're going to take off a little bit off your bill. If you get DirecTV now and you're an AT&T Unlimited Wireless customer, you only have to pay $10 for it. That's, I think, going to be the enticement. I think the bundle, it's not just bundling of content. The big pie in the sky goal is to bundle services with content. So Amazon Prime has it right. I think AT&T is going to be going pretty much going in that direction with Uverse or DirecTV, where if you get your internet, you get a discount, and you get those channels at a discount. Or if you're an AT&T wireless customer with an unlimited plan, for $10 you get DirecTV Now, which is like 60 channels, and free HBO.
You mentioned that people are going to be demanding, or there's going to be a growing demand for bundling, just because service is going to become so unmanageable. But I find there's usually a large gulf between the type of bundling that audiences and consumers want and the type of bundling that distribution companies and production companies are willing to provide most of the time. I don't know if it's going to be easy to reconcile, because it seems that in the U.S. right now we're seeing, like, what we're seeing happening very quickly is all these different companies are experimenting with different forms of bundling to try and make it more, I guess, economical in some sense, or try to build a more sustainable model for streaming moving forward. I find it interesting that all this is happening in the States right now, because one thing I've always sort of emphasized, or one idea I've always kind of argued, is that streaming in general is something that seems to be formulated to work in the United States, and things that are inherent to streaming, like population distribution, or the viability of running ads on services, or how many people in a region you need to subscribe to something for it to be sustainable. These decisions always seem to be made with the United States in mind first. I don't know about you, but I still kind of get the feeling that the future formatting of streaming will be done for the trends in the United States. There are not going to be a lot of considerations taken for other markets. I don't know. What do you think about?
Well, I understand. I understand why you think that, because it's true. We do focus on the United States first. After all these companies that I just mentioned are headquartered here, and their biggest infrastructure and their biggest audience is here. So yes, you're right. We are going to concentrate here first. There's no denying that. But once we start getting those services and infrastructure built in other areas, And of course, there's always a ton of regulations that you have to learn depending on what country you're in. And there are just some countries that it'll be a better idea to lend your content over to somebody who's already there and can act as a distributor for your content. And those deals are worth a lot of money. So yeah, there's a lot of, you're right. You're going to see a lot more experimentation in the United States because, Warner Brothers owns that content. Turner owns that content. And has the infrastructure and the resources to make sure that content is available throughout the country. Doing it on a worldwide scale, it's a pretty big ask. And with the exception of like Amazon, I guess, nobody's really, built ready for that. Well, okay, I take that back a little bit because like we are like Time Warner and Disney and NBC Universal, they're international companies, but not in the sense of, streaming. They usually just, they have certain countries where they distribute certain rights. And that's going to be some of the I guess the challenge of scaling up to international scale. But I think that a lot of these companies are ready and willing to meet that challenge, because we have to. I think that, eventually, look, the one thing I want to say about cord cutting real fast, and I'll get to my point. Cord cutting is it finally has started to become like noticeable because everyone's like, oh, cord cutting's coming, cord cutting coming. We didn't really see any losses in any sectors from Comcast or DirecTV or anywhere until like late 2015, early 2016, where we finally started seeing those drops to like a palpable degree.
The thing about cord cutting is that if you only pay attention to headlines, it always seemed like a larger phenomenon than it actually was. When you actually look at like the breakdown in numbers, it is in reality something that is happening very, very slowly. It's happening. Yeah,
it's very slow.
Even with younger.
Now it's finally happening to a degree.
I was going to say even with younger audiences.
Yeah, the headlines were always there.
Even with younger audiences, it's happening much lower than a lot of people seem to think it is.
Yeah, the thing about cord cutting is like it makes for a great headline, but when you look at the numbers, not Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll, okay, we'll use Crunchyroll as an example because I happen to know that number off the top of my head. Crunchyroll just passed 1 million subscribers, but Adult Swim is in like 96 million homes in the United States. So who actually has the bigger base to work from? Who has the bigger reach, if you will? Now, obviously, Adult Swim is alongside all these other networks that you pay your cable bill with, but they are in your home. You are paying for them. And Crunchyroll, you have to make a conscientious decision to pay for that service. And they've only reached about 1 million homes. So yeah, there's a lot of, and look, cord cutting is finally happening. Like, we are at the point where we're starting to see the numbers go down a little bit. But it's not like, oh, we went down from 96 million to 70 million. If that happened, we'd all be panicking. It's more like, oh, we lost like 200,000, 300,000 here, per quarter or whatever. Like, it's not like by the millions. We're not losing people by the millions. And all these companies like Disney and whoever, they recognize that, Disney especially, because ESPN, their revenue is like 75% affiliate fees from your cable bill, and only 25% from advertising. They're keenly aware of this. So, and we're aware of this, and everyone's aware of this. So we are in a good position to get you those services directly, that content directly, or we act with, or we just start paring down the bundles, because I think the thing is also there's a lot of channels out there. There's a lot of stuff that you're not really you're paying for, but you don't really want. People say that, oh, I only watch 1 or 2 networks. It's closer to actually 12 to 15 in our research numbers. It's closer to 12 to 15. And getting it down as close as possible to that and keeping the prices low is, I think, what what a lot of the companies are concentrating on doing, like DirecTV Now, for example. It's like $35 and 60 channels, which is, or Sling TV, which is like, I think like 25 channels or something like that. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's like $20. So like they're trying to keep those prices low and just make those bundles really, really small so that we can deliver to those customers that are like, you know what, this is way too much content. I'm not watching all of it. Let me go to this.
I find it interesting that in the States, cable companies have been delivering small bundles through the desire to be competitive. You probably haven't followed this too closely, but we have switched to kind of an a la carte model on Canadian TV. That's actually something, if you follow the show, we used to talk about this a lot, how the build up to pick and pay and a la carte TV, and how you can subscribe to only the channels you want. It hasn't worked out the way that I think people imagined it, but we're in a position now where if you want to add one specific channel to your cable package for $3 a month or something, you can do that, or you can drop certain services. There's a lot of flexibility there that there didn't used to be, but that had to come about through regulatory changes. A reason that we haven't talked about it on the show very much is that it hasn't really played out the way that I thought it would. Going back to that idea again, where we rarely correctly predict things on this show, but it's starting to seem that the industry, or the cable industry, the prices keep going up for basic service, because it's now possible to get like a low-end basic service. And the companies try not to promote that option, even though there's like mandated to offer it. That doesn't include things like sports or music channels that people don't want. It's just the absolute basic services, and then you can theoretically add any small package or individual channel on top of that you want. But they're doing. Right. It seems that rather than using that as a way to broaden the number of people subscribing to television, they are kind of doing the opposite and raising their prices on everything else, and just doing everything they can to milk the subset of people that they know are never going to drop their cable subscriptions under any circumstances whatsoever. Perhaps in the long term, we're going to see the transition that I think a lot of people were expecting, that providers would start consolidating their content into fewer channels that would have broader appeal and would be more desirable to people who don't currently have television in general, because Chorus is apparently planning to shut down more than a third of their channels, but it's going to be over the course of probably 2 or 3 years. Rogers did finally shut down G4 Canada just this past week, which is something that
I saw G4.
Yeah.
Gee.
Well, that's the thing, is that when you bundle those services, they make money off of them, regardless of what they're running. Right. Or even if nobody's watching it. So I'm sure that whole scam plays out to a degree in the States as well. But it's really seen as an exploitable scam up here in Canada. The companies, at least in the short term, are doing everything they can to double down on milking audiences rather than actually trying to expand the number of people who would want television. And I think that's unfortunate, because personally, I don't believe that television is a broken medium. I think that the industry is just really damaged right now.
I disagree with that. Well, yeah. Okay, maybe in Canada, but definitely not here in the United States. This is kind of a golden age of television right now. There's more content being put out than I think ever before. And more people are watching than ever before. There's just, take my network, for example, CNN. We're having some of our highest ratings in the history of the network. We're really blowing up. A lot of these networks that weren't doing so hot even a couple of years back are rising. So, and their content is getting into more people's hands, and it's becoming far more accessible. So I disagree with the industry being broken. I think that there's actually a lot to see, and there's a lot to get your hands on right now, and there's a lot of great content that's out there for everybody. So I don't think the industry is broken. Maybe in Canada the way they do things is different, but I can't speak to that. But here in the United States, there's more choice than ever before, and there is more content and there's more creators creating content that, years ago we probably would have never seen. Yeah, we're kind of in a golden age of television, so I disagree with that notion.
I guess the big problem in Canada is that you have all these companies that should be producing their own content and they're not producing it. They're just milking licensed U.S. content for all it's worth, and even all of the U.S. content doesn't make it up here. Like, look at Adult Swim Canada. They have the Adult Swim brand, but they basically don't license any of the content. The same goes for IFC and a number of other companies as well. So a lot of people find that frustrating, I guess. And you see a lot of U.S. stuff that doesn't even stream up here either. It's kind of weird how many gaps there are.
It is weird because, look, it's easy for us to deal with here in the United States because we have our content creators and our content companies create content with the U.S. regulations in mind. I think to create stuff with international regulations in mind is kind of it'll drive you crazy unless you're working on a Transformers movie, in which case you're making that movie for China. You're not really making it for the U.S. So yeah, that's, to try to create content for every part of the world, that's the idea, but you can't foresee, if you try to foresee every consequence that'll happen because of your content, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You just gotta take it one step at a time and get through all the regulations or partner up, and do the best you can. But because of that, things are going to fall through the cracks. I think there's what is that show? I think, was it Venture Brothers or Rick and Morty that just was not available in the UK for a while because Adult Swim, none of the Turner networks could make Adult Swim work.
That's the situation with Adult Swim in most countries outside of the United States, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, because they can't broadcast Adult Swim on Cartoon Network.
In the UK, that is the case. Yes. They can in Canada, and they don't take advantage of that at all, and it's so frustrating. But
we actually had that in Latin America while I was down there. Adult Swim was on years ago. It was on Cartoon Network, and then they took it off immediately because it was against a lot of Latin American countries' regulations to have that content on Cartoon Network. So they had to move it to another Turner network called iSat, which is a Latin American channel. And I believe it's still on. Last I checked, it was still on. I've been told by Adult Swim that it was canceled, but I still see the schedule up there, so I don't know.
Adult Swim has a...
So,
I don't know if it's...
Adult Swim has a weird reputation as well because their content doesn't translate very well in a lot of places.
Adult Swim overall, as an organization, they don't seem to really make much of an effort to break into international audiences or international markets. I find it's a really low priority.
Well, because it's difficult. It's a really difficult brand to market because it's a brand that I think that has a very much an American sensibility that does not translate very well in a lot of countries.
It doesn't translate well, but even in Canada, theoretically, we have all this stuff available on the app that launched here recently, the Adult Swim app, but they haven't updated it for Android 7. It's useless to me right now. I was subscribing to it long enough to finish the new Samurai Jack season. But in order to use it, I had to dig out this ancient Android tablet I have that barely works. I just strongly get the feeling that they're just not giving any priority to any market outside of the United States. They have an app in the United States, right?
Yeah, we do, but I'll be honest, I don't use it very much. I watch Adult Swim on DirecTV Now, which doesn't have a DVR, unfortunately. So I have to watch it live.
Yeah, well, I still think this is something they can be doing better with. And that's the problem, is that you're getting hyper-focus on a lot of these brands that just don't... They just don't care about making much of an effort in markets outside of the United States. And that becomes worse with streaming because every major streaming platform is based in the United States. And, you see... You always hear talk of them trying to produce local content for other markets, but it always comes off as kind of cynical to me, more than actually trying to I guess you could say service these markets in an inadequate way. I don't know how you feel about that.
I don't know about that. I'm going to go ahead and defend my colleagues at Adult Swim Canada. I'm sure they're doing the best that they can. We just don't have unlimited resources, and as much as we would love to just spend all the money internationally, we can't. That's not how it works, and that's not reality, unfortunately. But I know that Turner is going to be doing a lot more stuff internationally. I know Warner Brothers and HBO were all striving to make a lot of stuff work internationally. It's just a very difficult proposition. Because we're never going to prioritize something that makes a little bit of money over something that makes a lot of money. Does that make sense? Like, Warner Brothers is always going to prioritize their DC films over, everything, which came out a few months back, which, I think did fine, but it only cost like $12 million. And Wonder Woman cost something like $175 million. So obviously they're going to put a lot more of a push into Wonder Woman. And that's just kind of the reality of what we have to deal with. It's easier for companies like Netflix because Netflix, for example, streaming is their whole business. Like, that is all they do. Companies like Disney, for example, are much more than just that. They are a theme park. They are a television. They are movies. They are merchandise. They're all these things in one company. And so they can only spare so many resources to one thing. So I'm sure that they have their own streaming woes over at Disney.
But again, this also goes back to the centralization around American brands. Certain services have a harder time breaking into like Asian countries and different regions, but the overall goal seems to be sort of a global, I don't know if I want to say domination, but a global prominence for the majority of streaming services, and that greatly enhances the value and demand for American brands, which, in the case of Adult Swim, are not able to deliver upon that expectation.
I think from Adult Swim, you're going to see more stuff like Rick and Morty that I think Rick and Morty seems to translate very well in a lot of different regions. So I think from Adult Swim, once we have more content like that and less stuff like Tim and Eric, which doesn't, you'll probably see much more of an effort internationally. Because I know that Rick and Morty is, as far as I know, been doing actually very well in a lot of different territories.
Well, we'll see about that. Sorry, I'm pretty jaded when it comes to Adult Swim, just making any kind of headway outside of the States, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
I mean, I understand. I totally understand, but they're it's a brand that is really it's such a hard brand to translate, and if it doesn't translate very well, it's so hard to dedicate resources to that brand internationally. And you know what? Frankly, that brand doesn't have a lot of resources here in the United States to begin with. William Street is a pretty small operation compared to all the other networks at Turner. And in some ways, they purposely do that. They keep a lot of that stuff very low. They keep their budgets kind of very low so they can continue to kind of do whatever they want. Since they don't cost very much, they have that room to experiment and try different things, which is kind of why we love that brand so much. But once you start upping those budgets and really start putting in a lot of money, more eyes are on that William Street building. So, like CNN, it's really easy for us to scale up. Like, we're in 200 countries or 220 countries with CNN domestic and CNN international. Both of those networks are in, I believe, 220 countries. And we have a lot of eyes on us right now, and we have that budget to spend but we can't always do whatever the heck we want.
I'm just curious, when you say
like
that viewership is up at CNN, is that because because there's a greater demand for cable news, or is it just because of current U.S. politics?
Well, the ratings, I don't know about the ratings internationally. Mm-hmm. I can only speak for the United States in this case, but there is definitely a lot of people who are far more engaged with politics, right now in this country. So, it's not just us. MSNBC is also up. I believe Fox, I want to say that they're up, but they're not number one right now.
They were almost always they might have gone down. They were number one for many years by a significant margin in the States.
Yeah, and now currently they're number 3, which is very odd. They are trailing behind. So, there has never been such, like, at this current time, or at least I can't remember a time where so many people were engaged with politics in this country than they are right now. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And, CNN is a very trusted political source. I'm going to stand up for my network. I know there's probably listeners who are like, I don't believe you. That's okay. You can disagree with that. But our ratings are bearing out that people are interested in what we have. And to be fair, like, before everyone's like, oh, it's because of the current president. I think that's somewhat true, but it's not totally true because we were trending upwards way back in 2014, before the current president ever started to run. So we were trending upwards in the ratings for a long time. I think overall everything has kind of exploded in terms of viewership because of the election and the current president.
Okay, I won't pin everything on 45. So yeah.
No, I'm not pinning everything on 45. I think that there's a lot more than just 45 going on because I look on Twitter and I see a lot of people engaged with things such as the healthcare bill, DePaul, and I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sure someone's going to yell at me for not pronouncing it right. And a lot of other issues that are important to them and that we're covering, maybe not necessarily on television, but we're definitely covering on our website or covering internationally. There's a lot of people engaged right now, and our audiences are quite young. They're younger than ever. So it's a very interesting time in the news business. And as for to go to internationally for a moment, CNN International, which is not the same content as CNN Domestic, not necessarily. We do simulcast every once in a while, but there's a lot of stuff that is on CNN International, such as I'm on Poor, which interviews leaders from all over the world. Or I remember I stayed up late because I was just kind of entranced by the British Parliament elections that were happening. It was kind of fun to watch, and on CNN International, they went through the whole night and just went through all the districts where they were voting for new parliament members. And I believe that did very well for us, not only internationally, but also in the United States.
There's one thing I wanted to ask you about in terms of streaming. The ad-based streaming versus subscription-based streaming. Going back to High Dive, sure. I think it's important to point out that High Dive does have an ad-based option. You don't have to pay the actual subscription fee to access the content on there. What do you think is the viability of one approach over the other? Because, before, I can tell you from a Canadian or non-American perspective, up until about a year ago, the big complaint about streaming was constantly the fact that Hulu would not operate outside of the United States for the most part, except for a couple of select territories where things didn't actually work out too well. And is this because ad-based streaming is unsustainable compared to subscription-based streaming? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a tough question. That's a good question, though. I think that there's a lot of merit to both. I know that's a cop-out answer, but it's true. There's a lot of merit to both of them. I think it depends on how much you are willing to sit through commercials. And look, not everything I think is tuned or can survive without some kind of form of advertisement. I think that, advertising is very important, pays for about half my salary. And, it's just, it's such a tough thing. I don't know how, much people are willing to put up with advertisements, in this day and age of ad blockers, which I think is kind of scary, honestly. Because like people use ad blockers, which I understand using ad blockers for really obtrusive ads where they're just like, they block you from reading whatever you're reading. That I'm not behind. And I don't think we do that on CNN.com, thankfully. But the thing is we need them to survive. And those businesses rely on ads to get the word out about their business, so that they can survive. So there's a lot of merit to advertising in general. But whether or not people are willing to subscribe to get rid of ads, I don't know. I think it depends on the content. I think for something like YouTube Red, for example, I haven't heard any subscription numbers for YouTube Red, but it doesn't seem to be doing that great. And it's $9 a month, $9.99. And you get rid of ads on YouTube, and you never hear from them again as long as you pay. And I know it's bundled with a couple of other services. There's that word again, bundled. You get Google Music and a couple of other things. But I don't see that many people really paying for it that much. I think people are just willing to sit through ads on content like, for example, Mr. Casey Neistat or Philip DeFranco or whoever on YouTube. But stuff like, I'm an Apple Music subscriber, so music, I hate Spotify. I can't stand Spotify. Because I hate having to listen to it at work because it's like I have to sit through an ad and I refuse to subscribe to it because I already have Apple Music. I'm happy with Apple Music. It usually gives me what I want. So when it comes to that kind of content, I'm willing to pay to get rid of ads. And when I do, to get rid of it for Apple Music, I think it kind of depends on the content. Like if HBO, for example, started showing ads, I think everyone would be rightfully upset.
Yeah, but it's starting to, it often feels that the ad-based streaming is not really a sustainable direction. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but in Canada with Crunchyroll, they've actually had to limit access to their...
They got rid of ads,
no,
right? They didn't get rid of ads.
They limit access. Like,
right.
There's a 13-week window that you can access content in the library, and then if you don't have a subscription, then you can't access it anymore. This has been a year and a half since they implemented that. They still haven't provided an explanation as to why that's happening, and I really hope that changes or gets resolved at some point soon.
It might depend on advertiser rates.
I think that is the issue. I think this comes down to advertising, which is weird because when you watch Crunchyroll without a subscription on an app or at least on a video game console or something, all the ads you see are for Crunchyroll shows anyway.
They might not be selling ads in that area. Yeah. That could also be a reason. Yeah. So maybe it could be a combination of things. I'm not trying to tell Crunchyroll what to do, but it could be a combination of things where they don't have the advertiser outreach in that region, and they don't have the advertising rates are not quite as high as they are here in the United States. So that could be a reason where it's just like, all right, we have to depend far more on subscribers because building out an ad sales department for Canada is too much time and resources for us to do right now. Because, Crunchyroll, and they're the biggest in the anime industry, yes, but they're still kind of small. Compared to, Time Warner. And Time Warner has its own troubles with certain brands. So yeah, there's a lot of factors. And look, every company is going to do ultimately what is best for itself. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders after all. But I think that this is the painful transition period where we just figure out what works and what doesn't. I'm excited about that. I think that's super cool because in such a paradigm shift of the way we watch content, we're living through it. We can say to our, future kids or whatever, like,
there used to be this service there used to be this box called a DVR, and now we don't. Now we have cloud DVR depending on what service you subscribe to, and we just have one box, or it just comes on your phone, or one thing that does everything. I think that's really exciting. But we're in that period where we just have to figure it out first, and that's gonna be a bit of a growing pain.
It's just strange because if
right now we have to deal with the frustration.
I mean, if you can't run a service properly in some regions because the ad market is not going to sustain it, like the message that communicates to me is that service is unsustainable because it's not going to work everywhere.
Well, no, what they might be trying to do is just entice you into subscribing. Again, depends on the region. I can't speak for every single region, but I think that in the case of Canada, I think that Crunchyroll has probably determined that if we do this, we can probably entice way more people to subscribe to content and be able to get them onto the service and get them hooked. And once we got them hooked, they're just going to let it roll. And for a lot of places, that the best thing a service can do, the best thing for a service is that you forget you have it. Like, I'm sure if some of you go into your credit card bills and start looking, you might be like, oh, I'm still subscribed to that. I had that a couple of months ago where I was like, oh, I'm still subscribed to that. Crap.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure actually, Carl and I were discussing about the Anime Network, or the old Anime Network service, and I'm pretty sure anybody who subscribed to the Anime Network probably did so because they forgot that they were subscribing to it.
Yeah, I actually was subscribed to, what was it? I think it was the Anime Network on Uverse, and I never watched it. I did watch the Funimation channel. I was really upset when they became Toku because, no offense to Toku, they don't have all the anime.
Who owns Toku anyway? Yeah,
I have no idea. It's not. Well, actually, I think I might know who it's. I think it's Olympus. I think it's Olympus Systems, which is a broadcaster down in West Palm Beach, Florida. Because it wasn't Funimation never owned that channel. They licensed their shows and their name to Olympus. I believe
that probably explains it right there.
And Toku, I guess, is something they made up, and they seem to have a deal in place with Media Blasters, which, good for them. But they're running the same ads, as far as I can tell. They're running the exact same ads. But yeah, that was, I did subscribe to that, and I was happy with that. And Toku, I sound like I'm crapping on Toku. Toku had some cool stuff, not enough to keep me. Sorry, Toku, if you're listening. The network itself is listening, not anybody who works there, just the network. I don't want to hurt the network's feelings.
I guess one thing I was curious to ask you about, which is kind of off topic. How do you feel about One Piece's recent demise on Adult Swim?
Actually, I talked about this on the One Piece podcast, but I guess my personal feelings, is that what you're asking? I'm sad about it, but I get it. I understand why it ended up leaving. I mean, there were shows that were after it that were doing better. And look, Adult Swim, Patience of Saints over there, man, they really, really loved the crap out of that show. And they tried really, really hard to keep it on. And they gave it a really good run and a really good send-off. So, but at a certain point, just being a fan of the show, you cannot will something into success. At a certain point, you gotta say, this isn't working. And, I felt bad because Adult Swim One Piece was competing with Funimation and Crunchyroll's One Piece. So, at a certain point, you can't win. Naruto seems to be doing fine.
Yeah, Naruto's always doing fine.
Yeah, good for Naruto. They're doing fine over there. So, yeah, One Piece doesn't have that pull, unfortunately, on Adult Swim. But hell of a run, man. Hell of a run. And never say never, could come back. But I'm gonna put that in the doubtful pile for now. But I'm personally sad about it. I love that show. I liked it being on. But it's not like I can't just watch it. I am a little, okay, the thing that really bums me out, I'm in One Piece. I even have a line in One Piece.
You do, yeah.
We never got to that episode. That's the thing I'm upset about.
Yeah, that's a legitimate gripe right there, I think.
So yeah, I wanted to hear my voice on Toonami. That's what I'm upset about. But whatever. I am officially a part of 2 shows that have been on Toonami now. So 3 if you count IGPX, which I don't.
Great. Well, Jose, thanks. I think this whole discussion was pretty illuminating. So, yeah, thanks for coming on and sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you for having me. I love to talk about this stuff. You guys ever want to talk about 4K? I'm looking for some kind of avenue for that.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of Zonan Canada. You can reach me on Twitter @ZonanCanada or email zonancanada@gmail.com. The theme song is by Ultraclystron and can be found along with his other stuff at ultraclystron.com. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play Music, or your podcast app of choice, and if you can, leave a rating or review. It does help me a lot. If you know anyone who might like this show, please recommend it to them. See you again!